What's up, guys? This is episode 2 of Easy on My Eagles. It's your boy Rudy Cardona here, bringing you another week's worth of Eagles news and NFL-related information. I want to jump right on top of the Duce Staley situation that's going on. For all those of you who don't know, Duce Staley right now is our running backs coach, and he was recently interviewed by the Eagles organization to possibly take over as head coach. Just a little background on Duce Staley. He played on the Eagles for 6 years. Then he went to the Steelers for 2 years. His career ended pretty shortly, but that was due to injury-related stuff. And when he was on the Steelers, he was actually on their Super Bowl winning team with Jerome Bettis, the Bus, when they versed the Seahawks in 2006. Benefits to having Duce Staley as a coach. He has a history with the Eagles. He's been on the team since Andy Reid was on the team, even actually the year before Andy became head coach. So he actually has that interconnection with the actual organization and the coordinators and things like that. So he has a understanding for what the culture is like at the Eagles Stadium and the Eagles organization. He was also the guy that took over and gave McCoy those 2 years where he was dominating on the Eagles team. It's not just Chip Kelly's offense. Obviously, we want to know who was the guy behind this productivity behind McCoy, and Duce Staley actually turned out to be that guy. So for the 2 years where McCoy was almost the lead, he was leading champ, and then he was almost leading champ when DeMarco took over. Yeah, that was Duce Staley. Duce Staley was the guy right behind him and showing him what to do and telling him how to do it. So I mean, obviously there's some hope there. If you're able to do that, take a running back and show that much productivity, I mean, that's great. Not to mention you already have that interworkings with being interpersonal with them as a result of being a player and working for the team for a couple of years already. It's going to take, let's say Duce Staley did take over as head coach. I mean, it'd be a complete 180 because Chip Kelly was all about, organization and getting the job done and not really working on his interpersonal skills. And Duce Staley actually can relate to the players on a much deeper level, the way Bruce Arians or Ron Rivera or any of these other coaches that have actually played the game and know what kind of stress it takes on your personal life, as well as what you need to hear in the locker room before, during, and after a game. So I think that's a definite benefit to having Duce Staley as a coach. Aside from that, I did a little bit of research on him, and this guy has some great character aspects about him. I mean, I was looking up, he's really big into community service. He really helps out the kids. He helps out his neighborhood whenever he needs to be a part of that. And that shows huge levels of character. I mean, Connor Barman was just on the TV the other day for putting a park in one of the worst areas of Philly, and it just shows how much you can use your money and your character to better yourself, your team, and your neighborhood. So I think that's a great quality to have for the Eagles organization. He's also worked with Special Olympics. He was working to help train and help bring them up, and I think that's a great thing for him. I mean, it's like I said, man, the character on this guy is freaking insane. It's just devoting all his time aside from coaching. It's just great. There are some cons though. Let's not jump into the Duce Staley, let's not drink that Kool-Aid just that quickly, you know what I mean? Some cons. He's 40 years old. So I mean, there are some 40-year-old offensive and defensive coordinators out there, but he's a running backs coach at 40 years old, and he's only been coaching for, I want to say, a couple of years, not for a long term. He does have the history there though, but that's definitely a con. I mean, you don't have enough experience to really say that you've been around and learned a lot of things, because one of my concerns is that if you're going to be a running back coach and you're going to try and take over as the head coaching position, we might have the same type of issues where he might not completely know all the aspects of the offense. When you're a running back, maybe he only focuses on the running back aspect in a run-heavy offense. I mean, maybe he's not taking into consideration the wide receiver perspective or the quarterback things that need to be done. And that can be a really big drawback, especially for someone who's really inexperienced. This year also another con was that this year running back productivity was down. I mean, DeMarco Murray, Ryan Matthews, and Sproulsy were all struggling at the running back position this year. So, I mean, it's not a really good look. But at the same time, I don't want to contribute that only to Duce Staley because, I mean, Chip Kelly was running us out of the gun the whole freaking time, that motherfucker. And you can't be running side to side like that. I mean, if you have this guy in the single back, we shift the offensive line on a running play, maybe we get a lot more yardage. And I think Duce Staley knows that. I looked at a couple of his clips, and he really was in single back formation for the most part when he was running with the Eagles and the Steelers. And I think he understands that you couldn't stay in the shotgun. But being the running backs coach, you're not going to go up to Chip Kelly as the head coach and be like, yo, you need to change up this offense because this isn't working for my boys. I mean, he could have said something, but at the same time, it's like I said on last week's episode where you don't want to nobody wanted to threaten Chip Kelly and tell him how they really felt because they were too worried about losing their jobs. And that's something that I don't want to put too much on Duce Staley because I feel like, let's say we get a new head coach and Duce Staley still the running backs coach. I feel like he'll pick up the productivity, no problem, as long as he can actually, work out the single back, the I formation, different shotgun routes, whatever it may be, as long as we're not in the same fucking formation all year round. Another con against Duce Staley could also be the fact that the Eagles organization might just be doing this to justify the Rooney Rule. Now, I know what you're wondering. What the hell is the Rooney Rule? Now, the Rooney Rule is actually something that's really interesting, and I found it out, and I think it's freaking awesome for what it is. The Rooney Rule, well, first it was named after Dan Rooney, who is the CEO and owner of the Steelers organization. He's also the leader on the diversity aspects of the NFL itself. So what the Rooney Rule really entails is that it actually doesn't even allow. The Rooney Rule forces NFL organizations to include a minority in the hiring procedures when they're looking for head coaches or leadership positions such as offensive and defensive coordinators. So what this rule is pretty much doing, because of the history has shown us that there's a lack of minority coaches and a lack of minority hirings for these positions, the Rooney Rule forces the organizations to at least take a chance on these individuals. Now, granted, you can take the interview, but you still might the organization still might be one-sided and might not hire them. But the fact that the Rooney Rule is in place and the fact that they have to, by the rules of the organization, and by the organization, I mean the NFL, they have to interview these people. It gives them a fighting chance. And I think that's awesome. I mean, it sucks that the organizations had to be pressured into this by the NFL to have this happen. But at the same time, this should have been second nature. But I mean, that's just the nature of an organization. Some organizations don't want to deal with it, especially when you got top-notch coaches coming out, like let's say a Sean Payton, or for people that like Rex Ryan, let's say a Rex Ryan, when you automatically know, when an organization, let's say like when the Bills were looking to hire somebody, when an organization like the Bills already has in their mind preset that they want to hire Rex Ryan, then in their mind, what's the point in interviewing all these other people when we already know who we want? Now that's where the Rooney Rule comes into place because it forces you to interview these other people, and instead of you just picking him and not giving other people an opportunity. And that was a serious problem because in the past, before the Rooney Rule was set in play, like people were automatically just jumping on their head coaches. Actually, in 2003, I believe the Detroit Lions, as soon as they fired their head coach, they jumped on Steve Mariucci. And they actually suffered from a $200,000 fine because of the Rooney Rule, because they didn't even attempt to hire other people. Now, in their defense, what they said was they had plans to hire, or actually to interview, certain African American or minority individuals, but they canceled their interview with the organization because they found out that they were going to hire Steve Mariucci no matter what. And that's the problem right there. When you have an organization that is already set in stone where they're going to go with their head coaching position, that's where it falls apart. But I think that $200,000 fine is definitely well worth it. I mean, come on, these players are getting fined like tens of thousands of dollars for just slapping someone in the face like slightly or whatever it may be that's been going on out there. and the organizations aren't getting hit with anything compared to this. And getting back to the Rooney Rule, it's just an awesome thing, man. I mean, just giving them a fighting chance. The Rooney Rule has shown to increase hiring processes for minorities from 6% before it was instilled to 22% to now. And I mean, we're already seeing it. You got Jim Caldwell, who's coaching the Detroit Lions. You got Tomlin, who's coaching the Steelers. You got Ron Rivera, who's coaching the Panthers. Like, we're already starting to see these things, and it should show you that the race doesn't matter. As long as you know your shit, and as long as these head coaches can get the job done, what the hell does race matter anyway? I mean, Tomlin is I think he might still be the youngest coach in the NFL, and this dude has already taken his team to a Super Bowl. And if that wasn't proof enough that you don't really need to worry about the ethnicity of the coach that you're hiring, then I don't see what's the point. And that's why I think this rule is freaking awesome, and I'm so glad to know about it. But like I said, it just sucks that it's being forced. You know what I mean? Like, you would think that, being in the 21st century, the American culture would be more accepting of this, and people wouldn't have to worry about having to instill this rule. But now it's there, so nothing really you can do about that. And it's definitely a detriment to these organizations, because I know for a fact, even though they're making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, they don't want to take that $200,000 loss as a result of not even attempting to interview someone. So, but that's getting back to the whole thing with the Eagles is so that could be the problem with Duce Staley, is that maybe he's just a product of the Rooney Rule, and maybe the Eagles organization really has no interest in bringing him in to really be the head coach. But they at least did their due diligence of, at least trying to attempt to interview someone for the position. And I think it's just a benefit to Duce Staley. I mean, he's in the organization, so they at least gave him a fighting shot before they went out and looked for somebody else. But on top of that, maybe this gives Duce Staley as himself a sense of motivation. I mean, if you look back on Andy Reid, before he became our head coach, he was actually, I believe he was the special teams coach for the Eagles. And that was was a pivotal point when they were going through hiring processes for the Eagles, and especially for the fans, because history has shown that most of the head coaches that are hired in the NFL are usually offensive or defensive coordinators. So when Andy Reid got hired as a special teams coach, I think a lot of people were scratching their head on that one and wondering what the hell the Eagles organization was doing when they were hiring this guy who was being productive but wasn't really showing the focus of being an offensive or defensive coordinator. And, we reaped the benefits, though. I mean, Andy Reid came from special teams. He became our head coach. And this guy took us to the playoffs, I think, almost consecutively. I mean, there were a couple bad seasons there, here and there, but Andy Reid did his job, and he did it really, really well. And he's continuing to do it in Kansas City. I mean, those guys, he took, I believe they were, 2-14, and the next year he fucking took them to the playoffs. Like, Andy Reid's doing his thing. And maybe there's some quality there. Maybe Duce Staley has the ability to do the same thing. I mean, he's already shown productivity with McCoy. Maybe he can show productivity with the entire offense. Who knows? So I'm just glad we gave him a shot. I'm just glad that we care about our people. I love that about the Eagles organization, is that we take care of our own. I mean, you've got Brian Westbrook doing interviews and sports analysis on the Eagles website, and Brian Dawkins is still a productive speaker for the Eagles and the Eagles organization, and still does commercials and things like that for us, especially when you go to the games. He's one of the guys on the big screens. So one thing in the Eagles organization is we definitely take care of our own, and we definitely look out for our players during and after the organization. I got to go back and thank my boy Jeff Lurie for doing that, and the organization as a whole. I mean, it just shows the love, and hopefully that's the same type of love that's going to carry on, through this rebuilding process as we get new players and things like that. Speaking of new players, I wanted to move on and talk about free agents and the situation we're going to be in once the season is officially over. I mean, all right, our season's already over, but the first thing that happens is free agency. Next thing that happens is the draft. So I wanted to jump right into free agency and talk about a little bit about the key free agents that are on our team, who might we need to cut, and who might be valuable options to look at in the free agency market. As I mean, last year we made a bunch of different moves, but I honestly think with a new head coach coming in, he can't rely too heavily on the draft itself to bring in players that are going to make us productive for years to come. So he's got to grab some boys off the free agency to increase the quality of productivity. Our whole team works as a whole. So let's look at the key free agents that are going to be for our team this year. And I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty big hit. First is Sam Bradford. Now, he's shown some productivity for the team. He's not my favorite quarterback for the team. Honestly, I'm gonna talk about it again. I honestly think we should go for a quarterback in the draft and work our way up from there. Sam showed some productivity, but it's just my biggest issue with him is he can't get the deep ball down the field. This guy's running up to the freaking line to throw that ball as far as he can, and granted, when it gets up there, we have some players that can do some stuff. I mean, Nelson Aguilar knows what he's doing in the deep field with it, but it's just how much effort it takes this guy to throw that fucking ball all the way down the field. I mean, I can't stand it. And you can't have that. You can't be waiting in the pocket. You finally see something. You got to run all the way up there to throw the ball. He doesn't have the deep ball. He's pretty accurate on the short and medium passes, and that's great. But like I said before, without a deep threat, there's not going to be that warrant for double coverage, and it's not going to open up the running game the way we want to. So do we keep Sam? I want to say no, but the problem is that there's not going to be that many valuable options come free agency, and I don't know if our organization really wants to take a chance on someone like Colin Kaepernick, who could possibly be let go by the 49ers and could be great quality as a dual threat, but we're not running Chip Kelly's offense anymore, so what does it matter if we're not going to be running like that read option spread? So I don't know about Sam right now. That's really definitely up in the air, and we'd have to pay this man a lot of money, and I don't really think we want to take the chance on someone who might get injured again or just not produce the way we want him to. Walter Thurman. Walter Thurman is showing to be a beast this year. The combination of him and freaking Malcolm Jenkins is fucking off the charts. These guys as dual threat safeties are awesome. I mean, they're not hitters, but they're productive when they need to be. They're catching interceptions. They're disrupting passing plays. They're running in for the sacks. They're covering tight ends on opposing teams. These guys are really giving it their all, and they're really doing their thing. And I honestly think Walter Thurman needs to be re-signed immediately. We gotta keep this defense productive the way it is right now. Just keep it going. And Walter Thurman's a huge thing to it. Malcolm Jenkins, luckily, is locked in the contract, I think, for the next year or two. So we don't have to worry anything about there. But Walter Thurman, if we could lock him in there and have him on the opposite side of Malcolm Jenkins, then we would be we'd be in heaven. That'd be just fucking awesome. And that productivity. Then we would just have to worry about a couple slots because Byron Maxwell's already locked in. We got Malcolm Jenkins locked in. If we get Walter Thurman, that's 3. And let's say we got to go in the draft for a rookie cornerback, or let's say Eric Rose steps up, then we're solid. So I think the one thing Chip Kelly did do with due diligence was leave us with a solid secondary, or at least, players that can work into that position and produce if someone is to leave. And another problem at that position, moving on, is Nolan Carroll. Nolan Carroll, I think, was a great corner on the opposite side of Byron Maxwell. I think this guy was really holding his own, and every time that they were throwing to his side, he was right there. And him, Walter Thurman, and Malcolm Jenkins really work well together in the system. And I think Nolan Carroll is definitely undervalued as far as his productivity, and I think he's definitely shown that he can do it. He got a little injured. He got a little beat up towards the end of the season, but this guy was producing really, really early in the season, and I think it was showing through. But it's like I said, just listen to what I just said, though. Walter Thurman, Nolan Carroll, both gone this year. That means we're losing a key safety and a key corner. Now, it's just hard to say. And I mean, Eric Rose been producing, but the problem is that he's still a rookie. Like, I want this secondary to be, work together, have that chemistry like the Legion of Boom. I mean, that's made up of Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, and Cam Chancellor. These guys have been working together for a couple of years now, and Byron Maxwell was already on that squad, so he knows what it's like to work with a group of 4 people that really want to win and really want to be productive. And I honestly think if we can keep at least 3 or 4 of these guys in the secondary together, the productivity is going to be there. And I mean, we've already really done good the first year. I think it's just going to get better after that. That's why I honestly think Nolan Carroll should also be another guy we try to sign. Luckily, these guys are a little lower on the expensive side when it comes to free agency in the market. I mean, you've got people like Eric Berry coming out into free agency, and he's just going to warrant a lot of money. And that's the benefit that we get from Walter Thurman and Nolan Carroll. Having them on the team already, having them in the system, they might be a little bit more like willing to take a pay cut, so to speak, for the Eagles so they can continue working with the organization. Not to mention the stress that fucking traveling and moving constantly does for a player when you're constantly traded or turn into free agent and have to go to a different team anyway. So I think if we can put some money together and keep these guys together for at least maybe 3-4 years, I think that'd be the best thing for them and the best thing for the Eagles organization. And that's just obviously a fan's perspective, but I don't care what people are saying. This defense was a step up. Last year, fucking Bradley Fletcher was getting fucking burned on every deep and post route in the fucking game by every team against us. And that I'm just so glad we got rid of him. And I mean, fucking the Patriots got him and they fucking cut his ass too. And I mean, nothing against you, man. It's just when you getting burned down the field like that, like, what are we supposed to do as fans? We can't be happy about that shit. And this year, luckily, we got 2 safeties that are able to work over the top and help out the corners extremely well. And I think that's awesome. 2 other key players that we're going to lose this year, and I think we did a good job of having backups to them, are Cedric Thornton and Vinny Curry, both defensive linemen, but both huge disruptors against the run and the offensive line during passing plays. And these guys, to lose these guys is going to hurt. And the main reason is because the swapping out that we do at the defensive line position is so beneficial. I mean, we've got great guys, Brandon Graham, Connor Barwin when he steps on the line. Fucking Fletcher Cox is a motherfucking beast. And he's another one. But the thing is that you gotta rotate these guys. The defensive linemen get tired out real quick, and we need that fluctuation that's going on. And losing Vinny Curry and Cedric Thornton are going to be huge detriments to the productivity of Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, and all these guys in the defensive line, because you don't have those fresh bodies that have already been through, the punishment, that know what to do and how to handle it when it's necessary. And these guys, yet again, are undervalued. I think when they hit the free agency market, people aren't going to pay them the top money that they might need or might be looking for. And maybe we benefit from that, but I don't really think so. Just because I feel like the money that we have is gonna be needed other positions. And speaking of money, we're gonna need a lot of it come this free agency. I mean, for the players that we're losing, we're gonna need to fill in those gaps. And a lot of Eagles fans might not like to hear what I'm about to say, but I think it's time we get rid of Jason Peters. Jason Peters, don't get me wrong, is one of my favorite players on the team. He's probably he's probably top 5 left tackles in the entire league, if not top 3. And his productivity shows that. It's just he's getting closer to the end of his career, and he's still taking a lot of money from the team. And he's been injured. I mean, he was injured a couple times this year on separate occasions. And I mean, he came out of the last game or the Redskins game early as a result of worrying about getting injured. And that's just not a great sign at all. For instance, to know about how much he's going to be taking from us this offseason, Jason Peters is due $9 million. I mean, that's a huge amount of money for any amount of players that are coming on the team. Let's just go through it and we'll calculate it all at the end. Riley Cooper, like I said last week, needs to get the fuck off my team. This motherfucker is being overpaid like crazy for no productivity. This fucking guy is crazy as hell. I hate it. Not to mention we re-signed him after that whole racial fucking stint that he went through. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but if you want to look it up, just look up Riley Cooper and, racism or whatever it may be. I'm not saying he's a racist. I'm not condoling that. I'm just saying that's not a great look for our organization, especially when a majority of our players are minorities anyway. Maybe it was just, an act of intoxication or whatever it may be, but it's just, you don't want to see that on any organization. And nothing against Riley. I'm not going to sit here and say, had his productivity been better, I would be speaking any differently. I'm just not for any type of racial disrespect or racial remarks such as that. So that's just my opinion. But like I said, this guy's getting paid $5 million this offseason. So you got Jason Peters making $9 million. You got Riley Cooper making $5 million. And the last guy, and he's definitely not the least, who needs to get the fuck off the team, is Mark Sanchez. Don't get me wrong, Mark had a couple games that was good for our team, but he's just riding the bench and he's getting paid way too much money. This guy's he's going to get paid $4 million this offseason come next year. So if you calculate Jason Peters $9 million, Riley Cooper's $5 million, Mark Sanchez $4 million, that's $18 million in the offseason that we can use to beef up our team through free agency. Now you may be wondering, when I'm looking at this money, where would I want this money to go to in the free agency? Like, what do we really need? And honestly, offensive line is probably the top priority. Because if you think about it, if we're going to pick up a rookie quarterback in the draft, we want to at least be able to protect this guy. Or if we're going to keep Sam Bradford, we want to be able to protect this guy. And we're going to need this money. I don't think going through the draft to pick up offensive linemen is the best suggestion. We've seen some be productive in the past, but the top-notch guys are always like right off the board, top 10 picks. And if we're going to go quarterback first round, we don't have a fucking second rounder because we gave it away for Sam Bradford. Thank you, Chip Kelly, fucking dick. So we're going to have a first round pick. We're going to be waiting past the second round, and then we're going to get a third round pick. So obviously, in my mind, we got to go quarterback first round. Now, to benefit this, we got to go into the free agency for offensive linemen. And that's where I think the money needs to go to with the money of losing these people. We take Jason Peters' $9 million and we put it towards another offensive lineman who can come in and do the job. And I got a couple hopefuls that I wrote down that I'm really focused on, and I hope they have the opportunity to come to our team, depending on if they get re-signed or not by their own team. First one on the list is Russell Okung, left tackle for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I know what you're thinking. The Seattle Seahawks offensive line has been a little beat up, and Russell's been getting hit a lot more. But that offensive line also gets the benefit of going against one of the best defensive lines in the NFL today. So Okung has the history and the ability of being able to go up once again against one of the best defensive lines, and I think that's extremely beneficial for our team. If we're losing Jason Peters, one of the best left tackles in the game, we gotta fill that gap real quick and really strong. And Okung actually, I think, might be one of the best options coming off the board. He's going to be a little bit more on the expensive side, but the benefit is he's 28. So we signed this dude to a 4 or 5 year deal. We still getting the benefit of getting him during the prime ages of his career. That's just one guy. And the reason why I'm a little bit more optimistic about Russell Okung is because J.R. Sweezy, the guard for the Seattle Seahawks, is also going to be a free agent. He's also someone I would like to take and plug into the offensive line. So either one of these guys would be great to put on the team. J.R. Sweezy is also a really great offensive lineman. He's a guard, not a tackle, but he's 26 years old. This guy's got even more years on his belt to wait it out with the team. And if we sign him early and we sign him to a long-term deal, he can just stay with the team, produce with the new guy that we come in to bring a quarterback, or Sam Bradford, whoever the team wants to choose. God, I hope it's not Sam. Oh, man, please no. And going back to, he can just be productive. These guys, being young, can come to the team and be extremely productive when they're coming here. You've got some other guys, and I'm only saying their names because of the systems they come from. You got Ted Larson, guard for the Arizona Cardinals. He's 28 years old, still young, but I like him because he works with an organization where they were really pass heavy, but also productive on the run. So you have to be multi-talented on the running and the passing game. And Ted Larson not only has shown that, but he's also coming from an organization that stresses that. Same thing can be said about Kelvin Beachum and Mike Adams, both left tackles for the Pittsburgh Steelers, both really young. Kelvin Beachum's 26, Mike Adams is 25. but they're coming from systems in which they focus primarily on the passing game, but also benefit from being multi-talented on the running game. So as you can see, this is where my focus is coming from. My focus is we need offensive linemen in the free agency more than anything else, but we need guys that can do both, because DeMarco Murray, honestly, if you think about where DeMarco Murray came from, he came from one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and that offensive line benefits from being able to pass block and being able to run block. And that's what we need. We honestly need that more than anything else. And not only if we decide to pick up a rookie quarterback, but also because it will help take the pressure off of him by securing the run a lot more. So that's where my head is with that. Just some key notable mentions for defense. You got Sean Smith, cornerback for Kansas City. That's just somebody I'm looking at because we're losing Nolan Carroll and Walter Thurman. Problem with Sean Smith is he's more one of the top tier corners in the league coming from Kansas City. He's 28, so he's still relatively young. Still got 2-3 years on his prime years, but he's going to warrant a lot of money, and we're already overpaying Byron Maxwell, so we don't have the luxury of paying another corner that top money. You got Gerard Powers, who's the cornerback for the Arizona Cardinals. He's also 28, but I think he's a really great cornerback. Problem with Powers is because he works with a system that had Patrick Peterson on one side and Cromartie on the other last year at the Arizona Cardinals. He mainly played in the slot, and it's great if you're a great a slot cornerback, but the problem is that we need that other side to be taken care of. And I like Powers. I think he'd be a great addition, but I don't know if he'd be the number 2 guy on the other side of Byron Maxwell. And just like I said, key notable mentions. I just really think that it's in the best team. I think it's in the best interest of the team to re-sign Walter Thurman and Olin Carroll, and just keep the defense and keep it solid the way we have it. Other than that, I think those are the main things we need. Offensive line, maybe defensive line, but primarily corners and definitely offensive line, and quarterback, obviously. But if we're not getting one in the draft, we'll pick up one in free agency. And if we don't pick up one in free agency, then I don't know what to do, and we're probably going to end up with Sam Bradford again. But yeah, that about wraps it up for the second episode of Easy on My Eagles. If you guys enjoyed this, subscribe, leave a review, hit me up at Easy on My Eagles on Twitter, and leave those tweets, leave those comments, and I'll get back to you, or I'll just talk about them on the show. Thanks, guys. As always, please, please, please take it easy on my Eagles. No, seriously, take it easy.